Good morning, everyone. Mitchell Hora here, as always. Welcome to another CI Chit Chat. We're here every Tuesday answering your questions. We've got a couple of them, but definitely put your questions in the chat. We got time to be able to get to what you guys want to get to. But like we always start, let's start from the very beginning. We always have new people joining these chit chats every single week. So let me catch you up kind of from the beginning and start with what the heck is this carbon intensity thing? Carbon intensity, or CI for short, is essentially it's a metric developed by the Department of Energy to create the standard unit of measure for the carbon footprint of different fuels or different sources of energy. So basically, it allows us to cross compare and compare fossil fuel gasoline versus ethanol, or renewable diesel versus regular, fossil diesel fuel, or sustainable aviation fuel versus jet fuel, those kind of things. It provides the standard unit of measure, and the calculator for it is the GREET model. The GREET model it's a tool developed by the Department of Energy. It's been around since the mid 90s, but now, of course, with tax credits, there's a lot more focus on it and a lot more push to to update the model and continue to improve its accuracy, of course, which is great. We need to tell an accurate story. We need to have the best science available, and on the farm we're doing a good job. But we can continue to do better, but we need to tell that story as accurately as we can. So the GREET model is the gold standard in the tool to quantify the carbon footprint of the fuel. And the GREET model has the feedstock calculator, which is what we are able to utilize to quantify the carbon footprint of the grain that's being utilized as the feedstock for the fuel, right? So we can quantify the carbon footprint of corn, soybeans, sorghum, and rice. They're adding a couple other crops like canola and wheat is what I've heard, but no idea when those will be released. We are expecting a updated GREET feedstock calculator. I would anticipate maybe later on this year, but kind of hard to tell. We'll see what government actually ends up putting out there. So the main tax credit that we are really monitoring is called 45Z. 45Z is part of the Inflation Reduction Act, and it's for any transportation biofuels. So we're talking ethanol, biodiesel, renewable diesel, and sustainable aviation fuel. And this credit is due to start on January 1st. So for fuel produced in 2025, that fuel, of course, being produced with the crop that we are growing in 2024, and the crop grown in 2024 that we're putting in the ground right now, we got to be quantifying the carbon footprint utilizing this GREET model. We need to be documenting our farming practices. So we're going to have to verify this stuff. The IRS still has not put out the final rules for 45Z, but a couple of weeks ago, they did put out the rules for 40B. I have a full, couple different webinars about it. They're on the YouTube page. If you'd like to check those out, go to the Continuum YouTube page. You can also listen to everything that we do. Ends up on our TopSoil podcast as well. So you can check out the TopSoil podcast wherever you like listening to podcasts, and you can hear all this content that we've got out. And you can listen to my voice until you are sick of me. So, and if you ask my wife, she would already say she's sick of me and doesn't want to listen to him. So I'm just kidding. She's great. The I do want to clarify a little bit. There's a lot of confusion about 40B versus 45Z, and some people think that the 40B rules just like tank this whole thing, and like farmers throwing their hands up in the air and saying this is all over, government hates us, we're done. That is not the case at all. Okay, so 40B is a 2-year tax credit, and it is for sustainable aviation fuel. It's an indicator for what's to happen in 45Z. Secretary Vilsack called it a placeholder, and it gives some indication as to what's to come. It gave us really good clarity around the definitions of cover crop, no-till, and utilizing enhanced efficiency fertilizers or stabilizer additives. So give us great clarity and information about that. Give us great clarity about the verifications that are going to be needed to certify that these claims are legit. It did punt on utilizing the actual GREET feedstock calculator, and instead the IRS proposed this concept of a climate smart ag pilot project farmer. And to be a climate smart ag farmer for corn, you have to do cover crop, no-till, and use enhanced efficiency fertilizer. For soybeans, you have to do cover crop and no-till. So if they keep to this same bundle approach, I agree, 45Z is not going to be great. There's very small percentage of farmers that are doing all three of those practices, cover crop, no-till, and nitrogen stabilizers. Very small percentage that are doing that on their corn acres. I would estimate maybe 2 or 3% of farmers in the country, or of corn grown in the country, I should say. So a small percentage of the corn grown in the country that would actually qualify as climate smart, and only a subset of that would even be able to really go into the ethanol or the biofuel space. So if they keep with this bundle approach, yeah, the on-farm component of these tax credits, not really going to do a whole lot. But they know that and they're hearing it loud and clear. And a lot of the articles out there from the different commodity organizations and those kind of groups very clearly pointing out that, like, hey, if you guys keep to that, you have to do these three practices and you have to do all three of them stacked and bundled together. It's just, we're not going to get the volume that we need. And the way that the math works out, that they, instead of using the feedstock calculator to quantify the actual CI score reduction, they also punted on that and said, we'll just give you 10 CI points of reduction for corn. If you're doing these practices, we'll give you 5 points of CI reduction on soybeans. Well, that small number of points, when converted to dollars in these tax credits, just not enough money to move the needle. If you're already doing these practices, okay, maybe that it's a cherry on top and that's fine, but it's not going to entice people to change practices. The value of the tax credit, both for 45Z and for 40B, it's pretty similar math in either option. But if they keep with the bundle approach where you have to do cover crop, no-till, and nitrogen stabilizers, the total value of the tax credit, total best case scenario value, is about 60 cents a bushel. And then the farmer would only get a portion of that. So by the time you're splitting up a 60-cent pie, by the time it gets split up, it probably going to be tough to really move the needle. Say the farmer gets a third, right? 20 cents a bushel. 20 cents a bushel, probably not going to encourage people to switch to do cover crop, no-till, and nitrogen stabilizers. If you're already doing it, okay, maybe, but there's a very small percentage of farmers that are doing it today. So in conclusion, 40B, it was just a 2-year thing anyway, and it's only for sustainable aviation fuel, which is as minuscule of a market as it could be at this point in the game. And they understand that they've got to make the rules more inclusive. In 45Z, I think they're getting that message loud and clear. So our side is our approach is full speed ahead. And we've got to quantify all this stuff because they've very clearly laid out the need for verification. We're going to have to document and track these bushels. There's going to be some traceability to all this, and they give us some the clarity around that. And they give us good understanding of what type of data we need to document in order to prove that these practices are real. So everything that we've been doing at Continuum Ag, full speed ahead. We got some great insight about these credits, and farmers, we need to get our data organized so that we're ready for these programs. Last thing here on these credits. With 40B, the type of credit that they created, the IRS created the rules, they pushed them out into the world, and they were done. Said, here's the rules are the rules, right? It's a 2-year tax credit. It's only a couple months from being done. It is what it is. It's my understanding that the type of tax credit that they are creating with 45Z, the one that we actually care about, 45Z, they have to propose the rules. Then there's a 60-day comment period or public feedback period. So we're going to be able to provide them feedback and show them like, hey, here's what we recommend that you be doing. And there's going to be an opportunity for farmers to really get loud, and for our friends in the biofuel space to really get loud, for folks here to really stand up for agriculture, stand up for American renewable energy, and voice our thoughts and our opinions back. So obviously we'll have a lot of conversations between now and that time. And when those rules get proposed, we're going to need to be ready to act and to give some feedback. So, but at least there will, it's my understanding that there is supposed to be an opportunity for us to give feedback when those new rules get proposed. So hopefully that makes sense. 40B got some good things out of it, but the actual credit itself doesn't necessarily do anything for farmers. And it gives good indication of like, hey, we need to make some changes. And I think they're hearing that loud and clear. And sounds like the adjustments are in the works to make it better. So it's going to take a lot of data, and that's what we're all about right now. Is we got to document this stuff and be ready to help out and participate in these programs. So a couple questions that came in. Be sure to put any questions that you got in the chat here as well. So Nick though asked, I'm currently 100% no-till, and on my second year of using cover crops on half the corn acres, about a third of the farm total. How do I take credit for this? So great follow-up there, Nick, to what I was just explaining. So it's and Nick doesn't necessarily share if he's doing anything in regards to the nitrogen stabilizers, but say he is using nitrogen stabilizers on all of his corn. So his corn that's using the no-till, which is 100%, and his corn that's using cover crops, which is half of his corn acres, right? So let's say that that's actually the full field, right? So say he's got 3 fields that are no-till with cover crop and with nitrogen stabilizers. Those would qualify as climate smart. We can help to document that data, and our third-party verifier will verify that they are climate smart. That's going to be an add-on to our normal CI certification program, but we'll have all the same data, and we can make the decision later as to, is it going to be the right thing to verify or not? I don't know if it will be, but nonetheless, we need to start documenting that the no-till, the cover crop, the nitrogen stabilizers, we need to document that that stuff is happening and do that on a field by field basis. So in the Climate Smart Ag program, those fields that are using all 3 practices can be verified and proven that they are CSA certified. The fields that aren't using cover crop would not qualify, at least under these CSA rules today. However, as this gets rolled out and they use the actual GREET feedstock calculator, which hopefully they do, and we're gonna have to keep pushing on that. But as they move away from this 3 practice bundle approach to using the actual GREET feedstock calculator, now every single one of your fields can participate, Nick. The fields that have the cover crop will have a much lower score. Cover crop is one of the best ways to reduce your carbon intensity score, alongside using manure, reducing tillage, reducing your synthetic fertilizer. But cover crop is a big one. Those fields that don't have cover crop on them, they're still no-till. They're still doing a good array of other practices. They just don't necessarily have the cover crop on them in 2024. So those fields won't have as good of a score, probably depending on your location, which I don't know where you are, but usually it's about 12 points worse where we don't have a cover crop versus where we do. So cover crop reduces your score by, like I said, on average about 12 or so points. In my neck of the woods in Southeast Iowa, it's actually better than 12 points. Makes a big, big impact. So what we want to see happen, Nick, is we will quantify the carbon footprint for each field individually. There will be bushels harvested off of each field individually. The CI score will be associated to those bushels, and we'll basically create a certificate for each bushel and the score for each bushel. Those certificates can be batched and can be blended and sold into the marketplace. If we have to go back to only verifying the fields that have all 3 practices, we can do that. But at this point, we still need to be focused on quantify the entirety of your carbon footprint for each field. We still need to plan on documenting all your practices for each field. And we can always dial that back if we need, but today. Let's keep pushing full speed ahead and show that we actually can document our practices to the fullest extent. And let's prove to these bureaucrats that we actually are doing a great job and we have our data organized and we're ready to roll. So Jeff is asking, doesn't the practice bundle align well with the proposed requirements for herbicide labeling under EPA and the Endangered Species Act? Could this be an overall strategy to keep messaging consistent? I'm not familiar enough with this, Jeff, and would be all for having you like help and explain of what you're seeing there. Of course, EPA is continuing to fiddle with herbicides and other pesticides and what we can and can't use, right? They're making rulings on those all the time. But I'm not sure how that would directly align. So in the 3 bundle approach, right? They've got cover crop, no-till, and the enhanced efficiency fertilizer. They don't know anything about the pesticides, only the nitrogen stabilizers, but they don't necessarily know anything about the pesticides. So I'm not exactly sure what you're seeing of how that would directly align with this Endangered Species Act component, unless you're getting at like, hey, they really want cover crop in order to protect these endangered species, right? Which, of course, we know that this administration is really trying to push for cover crop and no-till, and now they're just labeling it as climate smart and trying to put some money behind it. But Bradley, does data from Climate Field View work for verification? Yeah. So we're building out our automated integrations with Climate Field View, John Deere Ops Center, and other things like that right now. So talk with your Continuum Ag agronomist, your representative, and we'll get that data linked up. So we'll pull what we will actually do and help you to do is pull the data from Climate Field View, get it organized in our documentation system. Our software is called TopSoil. We'll document it in our format. That way, when we help you to share it with the verifier, it's all in a consistent format. But yeah, on your side, Bradley, no double entering of data. We can work with the existing software that you already have and make this as easy for the farmer as possible. So again, talk with your Continuum Ag rep or go to topsoil.ag. You can get started and one of my people will hit you up. Tim's asking, if we are doing all 3 practices, are we going to have to store the 2024 crop or there'll be a premium available for fall delivery? Okay, so good question, Tim. This comes up a lot. So, of course, the answer again is we don't know yet. But what I anticipate is we won't get the 45Z rules in 2024. I don't think we will. We might get some preliminary rules. I hope we do. I hope the government exceeds our expectations, but I do not bet money on that. That's for sure. So it's hard to tell when we're going to get these final rules. So, but Tim, what we know today is the grain that we're producing in 2024 that has these practices will likely be able to create some type of value for fuel produced in 2025. At this point, easiest slam dunk is going to be grow the crop in 2024, maintain ownership of it, sell it in 2025 when these credits are actually supposed to be going. However, if a biofuel company is going to be creating low carbon biofuel, call it ethanol, low carbon ethanol on January 1, 2025, day 1 of these programs, in order to produce low carbon ethanol on day 1, January 1, 2025, you got to have low carbon corn sitting in the bin on December 31st, 2024. Therefore, opening up an opportunity for farms like you to be able to still sell that grain in 2024. The ethanol company can store it, hold on to it, and at least hang on to these certificates or the CI scores, the verified CI scores, and they can utilize those in their 2025 production. I do believe that you won't get the full tax credit value if you're selling this grain early. They'll likely end up paying an estimated value, and then there'll be a settle up later on once we have the final verification report, which we know now from our reports anyway will happen early in 2025. So we'll get it verified, and then they get the actual IRS rules, and then there can be a settling up. Worst case scenario is we don't get the rules in 2024 at all. We don't have any indication when the rules are going to happen in 2025. Therefore, we're just selling grain like we sell grain today, which this scenario that I'm going to lay out is a very real scenario plenty high chance that this actually happens. Okay. So say we have no rules, and say this time next year, we still have no rules. Okay. We're into May of 2025. We're already more than a quarter in to these tax credits supposed to be going, and we have no rules. Therefore, the ethanol companies, besides those that are trying to be really proactive, but by and large, the ethanol companies aren't paying nothing. You sold the grain. They're not even asking about your practices. They're not even asking about data. They're not paying anything for it because they say, can't pay you, so we don't have the rules. Very, very good chance that happens. However, when the rules do come out, they very likely will be retroactive to January 1, 2025. And I say that because the 40B rules came out in April of 2024, and they were retroactive for calendar year 2023. Okay. So very good chance that the same thing can happen here with 45Z if we don't get the rules before January 1st. So whenever they get the rules, then they're going to say, well, hey, Tim, you sold us that corn. Do you have some of the data, and do you happen to know what the CI score is? And do you happen to know, like, that any of that info that we could now get from you, because we actually do want to quantify this stuff? And oh yeah, this Mitch Hora kid was right the whole time and read the law, and and luckily he helped you to get all the data. And then we're going to be able to say, hey, yeah, we got the data. We've already got it verified. We've already got these reports. Here's what it is. But hey, we got to be compensated for it because we're creating some serious potential cash value here in these credits. So what I'm getting at is, okay, worst case scenario, we don't get the rules until at some point after the tax credits are due to start. Then we get the rules. They look back retroactively. I want to make sure that the farmers that are on this call, farmers working with Continuum Ag, we're ready to go and can provide the data, provide the verification reports whenever these companies do get their act together, and whenever the government gets the rules out there. So we need to be ready no matter what. The other side of the coin of all this is, say we don't get these tax credit rules, but we do have our data organized. We have our information put together. There are lots of other programs in development for other carbon insets or other sustainability initiatives, other groups that I believe are going to be utilizing these carbon intensity scores and developing programs on top of them in the future. Maybe those opportunities will open up for us as well. So biofuel is option A, but options B, C, D, and so on, I believe, will come to the forefront as well. Sorry for the long answer there, but my buddy P. White, if you start the process for verification now, how long do you plan on it taking to get the low CI bushels verified? So we're going to be making some major announcements on this here super soon, but we now know from our verifier, we're going to need to start submitting the first tranche of data to the verifier by October 1st of this coming year. So we need to be documenting at least the boundaries, the farm management practices, and if farmers want to be in on the first tranche of verification, we're going to need to have this data in and organized before October. Now, obviously, we won't have the fields harvested by that time. There will be an initial submittal of data, basically by end of September. You got to have it all into topsoil. Then we'll add on the yield data after harvest, and the final verification gets completed. So the process of documentation, we want to start it now because it's going to be a lot easier to spread out the workload, document this data throughout the year. We've got some really cool tools that we're launching within topsoil, building stuff all the time, continuing to hire people like crazy. So we are building out our systems to automate and scale this. I already mentioned the integrations with Climate Field View and other platforms like that, really getting all this data pulled together, because essentially we have between now and harvest time to get our stuff organized and then add on the yield data after that. We do anticipate that there's probably going to have to be some additional delivery of fields and farmers that don't hit this October deadline, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. A lot more to come on the process of verification. And we actually have Mark from Eco Engineers coming to the TopSoil Summit. So be sure to check that out. A little plug for that. TopSoil Summit, June 3rd. Diana, I believe, maybe put the stuff in the chat, or she will. that the TopSoil Summit, we're getting hundreds of people coming to it already. It's awesome. Got some great speakers that are lined up for it, including folks from the biofuel industry. Southwest Airlines is going to be there. The EPA guys are going to be there. So to ask some of those questions about EPA and really their take on the GREET model and stuff, they're going to be there. A farmer panel, our supply chain partners or our 45Z partners, including our verifier, CPA firms, tax credit brokers, are all going to be at the TopSoil Summit. So June 3rd, Riverside, Iowa, really going to be an awesome deal. And tickets are only $50. So basically it's helping to cover the cost of putting all this together. But we just want to get all you guys around and make sure that we are ready to rock and roll and that you've got the best information available. So, okay. So Tim's saying that my agronomist said to not worry about certifying the bean acres for SAF use, even though we have a crush plant near us that produces SAF as part of their product. We'll have to do a little checking into that. Would it be wise to have those acres certified as well? Tim, let's have a conversation there. So what Tim's saying is from our approach so far at Continuum Ag has been, let's focus on corn. Let's punt just a little bit on the soybeans, with the main reason there being going from soybean to crush to refiner to whatever the actual product is. There's more steps in the process, and therefore the financial value is a lot less clear. And some of those conversions and the math, a lot less clear. It's a lot more straightforward in ethanol. So we've kind of punted on soybeans. Also, on soybeans, 1 bushel of soybeans for most folks creates about 1.5 gallons of the oil, and it's pretty good conversion ratio from the oil to the actual fuel. But point being is, since the 45Z credit is worth 2 cents per CI point per gallon, since 1 bushel of beans only creates 1.5 gallons, that means every CI point reduced on soybeans is only worth 3 cents per CI point per bushel, right? 2 cents per gallon multiplied by 1.5 gallons per bushel, 3 cents per point per bushel. Where on corn, the money is a lot better because 1 bushel of corn creates an industry average of about 2.9 gallons. We use the very conservative math of 1 bushel creating 2.7 gallons, and therefore 2 cents per point per gallon multiplied by 2.7 gallons per bushel equals a value of 5.4 cents per CI point per bushel. Is just the estimated conservative math. So the math is a lot better on the corn, at least our hot take on it. But Tim, if your local ethanol plant is able to crush that oil and utilize that HEFA feedstock is what they call it. So utilize that HEFA for sustainable aviation fuel, there very likely could be an opportunity there. But what I would suggest that we do is we need to have a conversation with that crusher. I have had a couple conversations with some crush plants. And again, I've got a lot to learn, especially when compared to the ethanol side. Ethanol, fairly straightforward. But Tim, happy to have a conversation on it. Shoot me an email or chat with our representative and just loop me in on it. Whoever you're working with can bring me in, and I can give you a little bit more details, or we can go talk to the crusher together. Brad's asking, can we attend the summit virtually? Daughter state trap shoot that weekend. That's awesome. Congrats to her. So yeah, like Diana said, not gonna be virtual, but we will record stuff. It'll be posted later. So and we'll reiterate a lot of things here. I do anticipate getting a lot of those guests onto our webinars or onto the chit chats and stuff here. Little plug for that, and maybe Diana will put this in the chat too. Next week we'll be here on the chit chat, but the week after, I've got one of our farmer customers that's going to be joining us for a full length webinar. So we're going to cancel the chit chat because we're going to do the webinar at 9 a.m. Central Time. And rather than have two Zoom meetings basically back to back, we're going to cancel this CI Chit Chat for the first time, and since we started it, and just do the webinar. So be sure to join that. John is not able to join us at the TopSoil Summit. He's going to be down in Brazil on his farm down there. So I asked him to be on a webinar for us, and I'm really excited to share what we're learning with John as we're exploring these carbon opportunities on 2 different continents. Been really fun to work with him, and he is a wicked smart business dude. So And yeah, we'll get more of these Topsoil Summit guests onto webinars and let you guys ask questions of them, and I'll dig a little deeper into these items with them as well. So with that, we are at time. Appreciate the questions here today and you guys hanging out. Nice crowd here this morning. Everything is recorded and on our YouTube page. Happy to take your questions. This is still, we really need to make sure that we are rallying the farmer troops. There is absolutely some good positives going here in this space, but it's going to take data. So we need to be focused on that. Be safe out there in the fields. We're getting really close to being done here in Southeast Iowa Southeast Iowa and on our farm anyway. Hope you guys are having good success out there as well. So be safe. We'll see you back on the Chit Chat same time next week. See you, everyone.